Flight boss, bitch. You know, for sure. You're not listening to the Mind of Terry's Mill. I'm the Archangel Uriel, and I'm here to carry out God duties and motherfucking responsibilities. And right now, we're going to talk about what is consciousness. Now, I got a video that I put out about 2 years ago talking about what is consciousness, but we in a new time, new people, new circumstance. So I'm probably going to have new developed information to be able to break it down more clear, even though I'm going to say a lot of things that I said in the previous video. But this video right here is going to break it down a lot more clear due to the new time and the new level of people that's on the internet right now. So for the most part, here's the thing. What is consciousness? Now, like I said, we have to break down certain words, certain terms. And when we think about signs, sigils, and letters, these are like gods within themselves. Gods is another word for energy or a form of information or shape and form or just another vibration of light. So keep that in mind also, right? Before we get lost into the religious aspects of it. Now, here's the actual thing, right? When we start to talk about consciousness, right, is ruled by the C, the O, the N. So the C, that's feminine energy. So for the most part, we're in the C's. So for you to spiritually see something, right, you know you're developing light forms out of the sea, out of a body of water, or premortal water in some way, shape, or form. So you think about C, right? C is a cycle. And then when you think about O represents a container or a multitude of something. And then you got N, going in. So this is a cycle creating a form to go into when we think about Khan. And when we think about a cycle, when you're on a spiritual cycle and you have an imagination to concentrate on it, right, it develops into what can be perceived as light, aka what is light, information. And what do spirits use light and information for? To create illusions, to create dreams, to create imaginations that we can concentrate on long enough that it can become a realm of reality that vibrates slow enough to look like we got actual solids in there. You know what I'm saying? Like liquid, solid, gas, and these kind of manifestations of physical states. So when we start to talk about Khan, you bring that together. You're bringing a cycle that has a form to go into. That's C-O-N. Then once you create that, that lets you know that that's an illusion. So when we think about persuasion, that's what Khan represents. A sense of persuasion, a sense of illusion, a sense of a light. You know what I'm saying? A sense of a lie. So we lie in that light. You know what I'm saying? So we lie to ourselves. So before you get lost into the manifestation of the concept of lying to someone, telling them something that's not the truth, lie just means something that you're lying in. So we lie in our perceptions at time. You could lie into your individual, your solar plexus, aka you lie into your individuality. So a lot of times you lie to yourself or create a bunch of masculine and feminine thought forms and feelings and emotions to perceive how you want to be seen, even if you're not actually seen that way. So it's just things that our spirit is lying in, and the longer we lie into that, it manifests as in when we try to relate that to others, it can be perceived as a lie because we're lying to ourselves because we think we are this light. When your spirit is no shape, no form, and you create these lights as vehicles to represent your form of existence and information, that form that you're into creating nations. But that's another video. So like I said, then when we get into shush is a frequency vibration on its own. There's an actual science while we add these onto words. So for the most part, before you want to get lost into that, we can kind of generalize it and say that shush, the S-C-I-O-U-S, is always utilized to multiply something, or is always utilized as a form of fulfillment. You can fill it in, aka something that's singular can be filled in with a bunch of other things that match that singular energy, that frequency vibration, aka when one singular thing has a platform of a bunch of other things that represent it, it starts to vibrate. So for the most part, that's the shush, aka multitude of things or fulfillment. Right? So when you got conscious, right, we're trying to take the multitude of things, right, or the fulfillment, and we're trying to fulfill the multitude of Khan, light, illusion. So we're trying to understand the fulfillment of light or illusion. So that's what consciousness is. So when you think about consciousness in general, right, that develops into awareness. So awareness is really just another word for consciousness because they're one and the same. So when you think about the conscious, right, shush, that's us, that's the multitude or fulfillment. Khan is in front of it, is in front of that. So we're trying to fulfill a Khan. We're trying to fulfill a multitude of Khans, aka we're trying to fulfill multitudes of light, illusions, information, and anytime we try to fulfill it, this develops intellect or this develops expansion, or this develop awareness. You see what I'm saying? Because we are being aware of things. And the more that your spirit, no thing, no shape or form, your unconscious become subconscious, you become subconsciously aware. These are your your sons of gods, your mentalities, your chakras, you know what I'm saying, your stars, your influences, right? So once you become subconsciously aware, that's subconscious, because you're being internally aware but not externally aware. Then once you create your daughters of men, the vehicle that becomes dense, this is you being consciously aware. You see what I'm saying? So you are aware internally, which is your sons of God. That's in the feminine yin realm. So your masculine, positive, sons of God, everything has a yin and yang and masculine and feminine, but we're going to break it down from a general level. Your chakras, let's say these are sons of God, your mentalities are your masculinities, right? So for the most part, your mentalities, your chakras, right, they reside in the internal realm, the yin, the yin, the jin, the demi-urge. So these are your demi-urges. You know what I'm saying? These are urges that resurge. You know what I'm saying? Your light forms, your Lucifers, your Jesus Christus, your Apollos, your Helios, you know what I'm saying? And all these things, right? So that your masculine energies reside in the feminine realm, which is the internal, and then your daughters of men. Your feminine energy, your ability to receive, that got created from your sons of God, reside in the masculine realm, the yang realm. See what I'm saying? So you see how it's interchangeable. You see what I'm saying? So when we think about trying to understand that, this develops awareness. So here's how we get consciously aware and subconsciously aware. But without no sense of awareness, you're just unconscious. No thing, no shape and form. Or even if you are a spirit that's a soul, an individual spirit, solo, a soul, even if you are in a body and you did something or got into an accident or someone knocked you unconscious, they knocked your space, your spirit out of these vehicles. And how did they do that? Because your vehicle, one of your organs got damaged to the percentage level of that is not able to be utilized until it heals. So your spirit is not going to be able to utilize that vehicle, that eyeball, that organ, that to be able to see through this realm of reality. You see what I'm saying? And that eyeball, that organ gets developed from the chakra that derive in that area also. Your sons of God mentality develop your daughters of men, the organ. But both of these things are frequency vibrations, and one is in the 4th, 5th, and 6th dimension, the yin, and one is in the 1, 2, and 3rd dimension, the yang. You know what I'm saying? And that lets you know density levels, because dimension, what is dimension? What is dimensions? Defining the definition of separation between each light form, and not just looking at it as one perception. So that lets you know the higher in dimension you go, the more perception, more reality you're actually going to be able to see. And once you start to understand dimensions, you start to understand it's not even an up and down thing. It's an inside out type thing. So here's where you get lost into the geocentric model, or you may get lost into the heliocentric model, because you're understanding the concepts from up, down, ascending, and descending, not understanding the concept of relativity and rotational, which causing these pools to be the way that they're pulling in the first place, and to develop in the atmospheres. So now we have atmospheres. You see what I'm saying? We have atmospheres. And once we cross-lap atmospheres at times, we're able to have a higher shape and form in a higher dimension get perceived with the shapes and forms in a lower dimension. And here's where we develop technology or intellect, or be able to understand what's to come tomorrow, because what have happened yesterday. You see what I'm saying? Based upon influence and other kind of structures with the Masons and shit like that, be trying to correlate when they created astrology and astronomy and things of that nature. Now, when I utilize the word create, don't get lost into that. Now, like I said, right? So when we think about consciousness is just another word for awareness. So once you become aware, that's you becoming conscious. Now, becoming. Key word, that's you becoming. So by default, something happens when you become aware. As a spirit, you're no thing, no shape and form, right? Once you become aware of your space, your parameter, you become a solo. It's always space within space. So you become a solo space, a solo spirit, an individual soul. So now, an individual spirit, which is a soul, a solo spirit. So now once you become aware of your surrounding, your parameter, how much Adams and Eves you can create, how much influence you will have based upon the size of it, because all spirits can contract and expand. Here's where you get receding and shit like that from, and waters and light forms and shit like that, and what y'all thinking y'all seeing in the sky, but that's another fucking thing. But like I said, right, because everything is a body of water that's just light and a frequency. Light as in weight, not light as in photons, how they trying to teach you. Because when they explain light, they're just explaining a whole bunch of things that's light and weight coming together. Atoms and photons, these things are light and mass. So we know when the masses come together, that develops externalism. You see what I'm saying? But that's another motherfucking video. But like I said, when we start to talk about the consciousness, it's just another word for being aware. So once as a spirit you become aware of something, here's how a person can become the most conscious, right? Because they are the most aware of something, right? Now here's how you could be most aware of an illusion, and that develops into knowledge, knowledge, or intellect, to the point that you become aware of some shit that's not necessarily good for you. And it's good to be unaware of some things, because when you are unaware of something, you're not programming your subconscious mind or your mind to start developing those circumstances or situations. For an example, you could be a child that grew up spoiled or grew up in a rich family compared to a child that grew up in a poor family, right? But say you are unaware of the things that the child go through that's in a poor family, right? So you might manifest a lot of things for you to get rich and things of that nature, but you may take a lot of other things for granted also, because you are unaware of this person's trial and tribulations. But at the same time, the things you are aware of allows you to maybe move further as far as material wise in your life, and then vice versa. There's no good or wrong to either one of them. It's like a 6-9, right? Because they're both in the aspect of the 3, but then you just got different sides of it for the most part. So here's where you get into the which is the surrounding, the 3. Then when you get into the person that's broke, right? That looking at the person that's grown up rich, then they know what to look at to be aware of the things to not take advantage. So if they was in the same position as the person that grew up rich or wealthy a little bit, they'd know how to not fall down, because they know how to look at the things that this person may take for granted and stuff like that. But for the most part, for this person to be in that situation and have to work harder to get in that situation anyway, is because they're unaware of a lot of things still that this person is just automatically aware of due to the fact of the family that they grew up with. So you see how it's no right or wrong with either spectrum, but it just deals with awareness. And once you are aware of a con, you are aware of an illusion, you are aware of a sense of persuasion, you can modify that light in your perspective. Now once you got other people creating consciousness for you, they're making you consciously aware of this mathematics, this science, these type of things, then you're kind of utilizing your awareness and piggybacking your awareness off someone else, what they was consciously aware of. You see what I'm saying? So keep that in mind. So when you hear a person say, once you die, your consciousness leave or some shit like that, no, that don't make sense. This is your body is your consciousness. You could consciously see through your eyeballs. You could consciously be aware of what's hitting your eardrum. You could consciously be aware of what you're eating. You could consciously be aware of your mentality and how you feel. And that's getting to you being subconsciously aware. You being enlightened, understanding your lights within. So other people may not be able to understand you better than you. Once you become enlightened, if you're not enlightened, you become a chaotic individual where you need other people to help you understand you more than you. In all magnitudes. A lot of atheists right now agree with everything I just said, and then not knowing that I'm talking about you too. You need someone else to tell you what's intellectually going on with your mind state and things of that nature. So it could be on a high degree level all the way to a low degree level. When we start to talk about being consciously aware of what someone else wants you to be consciously aware of in some way, shape, or form of. And then that's the limits of your awareness can go. You know what I'm saying? So once you start to name titles and you learn from this person and this philosophy and you learn from these papers, and then that's all what you consciously know. You know what I'm saying? But we all could be consciously aware of a lot of things. And that's when that develops into wisdom. You know what I'm saying? That leaves the spectrum of knowledge a little bit, to the point that your knowledge, you can't teach what consciousness is. Only thing you could do is go learn from philosophers and things of that nature on what consciousness can appear to be. But with wisdom, you could take the understanding of the knowledge of consciousness, put it into action to be able to see the only possible ways that consciousness can even be developed to be a motherfucking science in the first place, and you will know that it just falls on the degrees of being aware. Then once you understand what being aware is, how far is you willing to go with those concepts? Because once you go back layer into who you actually are as a persona, you know you are just a space. That's not a substance that a scientist is going to figure out yet, and we know that it's space within space. So once you become aware of your individual space, your parameter, right, now you can have some kind of soul force. Now you can start, and the ability to be aware creates a substance in itself. That's why when scientists see a wave but point out that wave, they only see a particle, right? So keep that in mind. That's like you being a piece of all space when you're not aware, when you're unconscious. Once you become subconscious and start to be consciously aware of the sub realm to develop that, right? Then that's you developing awareness. You're developing your piece out of the whole thing. And by default, esoterically, not exoterically, the EX, where that's all religious people, that's all y'all know, and atheists and stuff like that. Y'all only know the esoteric shit that someone can explain to y'all on a third dimensional level. You don't know how to go there into yourself and just be esoteric. So you need a bunch of exoteric shit down here in order to modify what you actually got going on. And then that's why you're not a teacher. You're just or you probably look shameful for that. You're just a person that's trying to study up under other people that's philosophers and old teachers and things of that nature. And the only thing you could do is debate. But at the same time, you're just arguing for someone else's brain. So when someone's talking to you, they're not necessarily talking to you. They're talking to thousands of other individuals. So you're basically possessed. And when we think about the word possessed, you might argue that because of whoever planted the seed in your mind on what possessed mean. So you might think you're not possessed because it means the movies that you watch that they showed you through Disney and all this shit. You might think it don't mean possessed because of what that demon. You probably go to war with the word demon. You probably might not think it's possessed because of what these religious point of views taught you. But then, like I said, once again, that's why you don't got your own mind. You got to understand your own spirit, because if you understand possession, right, it just means you correlating your actions or your thought or your feelings based upon an external thought that's not yours, an external feeling, right? So I don't care if you going towards someone else's theology, you read 1,000 ancient philosopher books, or you did whatever, right? These are their ideas, and the moment that you see your world through someone else's lens, that's what being possessed is. You're not seeing something through your lens. You're in a sunken place. You need to go back to this book, this author, this philosopher, this architect, this mason. Do you know what I'm saying? You have to go back to these individuals in order to understand what's going on in front of you. So you didn't sat back and ate popcorn within you and let somebody else play your character throughout the movie screen. And you're looking up to see if that was the right thing or not and seeing where this ending goes. You know what I'm saying? And depending on how long the movie is, it might be a Titanic long worth of movie. You know what I'm saying? AKA, that might be how long you are lost and how long it's going to take for you to resurface back to playing your own character again. You see what I'm saying? So always keep that in mind when we start to talk about energies that we are actually getting into, so you can understand it from a full totality and then not look at me and be like, oh, he's wrong, just to go back to the person who taught you that, just for them to say what I'm saying in a more indoctrinated way. But then you got lost in there once you started to develop your own interpretation of it by default anyway. Once you started to develop your own interpretation off of offspring of someone else, that developed layers, tree branches, more lostness. Here's where we get into the branches, the language of branches, where we're utilizing light to explain light, L-I-G-H-T to explain L-I-T-E. So whatever we're explaining is not none of these things, but we're utilizing different degrees and shapes and densities of forms to explain a higher form that came before it or after it. But the thing that's before that may not be necessarily those terms, signs, or sigils itself. So we utilize metaphor, we utilize hypothesis. This is what the Mishnah about. You know what I'm saying? This is what understanding how to utilize certain concepts, where if it's only backed and supported by a number or a frequency, right, then it doesn't matter what the word is, but it's going to vibrate the same. So here's how you get concepts like Jesus, demon, heathen, you know what I mean, heathen, you know what I'm saying, the ego, E-G-O, the ego, E-A-G-L-E, with the bird ego, you know what I'm saying, and all these things of that nature. So keep that in mind. And all of these come from the aspects of understanding concepts and different pieces of light and things of that nature that you correlate as a soul. So, you know what I'm saying? Even going back into the Hebrew text and things of that nature, when understanding the soul spiral and things of that nature, where their concepts is kind of lost also. But it's helping you understand that whatever dimension that we're into, we're perceiving something the way our spirit is moving. That's why I told y'all don't even get too lost into the sun ascending or descending, which actually that's common knowledge. But even when the sun is not hot and things of that nature, because you have a few people lost on that, not knowing that if they went to school and understand how friction is created, then they understand how temperature is created. Then they understand when we got big ass shapes and forms that's moving differently to each other but close to each other, that's what create weather systems. That's why it's not spring and summer all year round. asshole, because it's more distance away from one chakra to the other chakra. Not that a star is producing heat in itself. So don't get lost into them trying to tell you it's hydrogen and helium and it's exploding in and out each other. That's them coming up with mathematical and some whatever. That's them coming up with things to try to understand why a motherfucking fireball is in the sky but it never burns out and is surrounded by motherfucking below zero type of freezing weather and shit like that in motherfucking space. So keep that in mind also. It's just a bunch of people trying to figure out shit they don't know. But when you understand how things actually are, right, then you'll understand whatever that they getting ready to figure out, whether 20 years from now or tomorrow. You will be able to understand, oh, it's just when two chakras come close together. That's why wherever geographical location it appears to be spring and summer on, that's why it starts to appear that the sun is a lot closer to the chakra that you on, a body of water that you on. You know what I'm saying? All the way from all the rivers and seas that's rotating from Antarctica all the way to the eastern continents, right? That big ass body of water is a star. That's let you know anytime you experience in spring or summertime within your geographical location, that lets you know your piece of this chakra that we're on is closer to that chakra, right? This is why we can have understandings of when you're closer to like certain ecliptics and things of that nature, and between Cancer and Capricorn, and going far out to one of these lines, one of these ecliptic lines and stuff like that, you won't experience no ascension or descension, right? You'll experience on one spectrum more spring and summer throughout the year, and on the other in daytime, and on the other spectrum you'll experience more winter and fall throughout the year and more nighttime, right? So that's not that has nothing to do with something ascending and descending. You see, it's talking about zones and when certain spectrums is creating certain light spectrums and shading certain other light spectrums, right? And lighter in frequency, which is waves. But yeah, I got to go to the store so I could go ahead and get another card deck so I could go ahead and finish out Libra through Pisces in this motherfucker though. But yeah, like I said, when we start to talk about what is consciousness, consciousness is all things that you see that becomes materialized. And things that become materialized, it has a process. And it goes all the way light through the dimensions, aka the higher the dimension or the outer the dimension, the lighter in frequency it is. Almost like when something vibrating heavy, that's a person alive. When something getting ready to dun 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 what? And it's sonic, it's flatline. And then that's like reaching Saturn from this person that we're in. But for the most part, that's like reaching the lightest frequency, the thinning of something. So something is fizzing out. It's not vibrating. It's not heavy. It's not a lot of color. It's not a lot of hue. It's not a lot of vibrational density energy that you could get sucked in and trapped. And it take longer to expire, and more experiences in those catastrophic moments that y'all get lost in, and these be the moments that y'all actually feel good in. So that's y'all heaven that y'all think y'all going to. So Luciferian energy, getting lost into the highest magnitude of a desire. A lot of Catholicism be doing that and all that kind of shit when they think they going to the actual. That's another video. But like I said, you know what I'm saying? All of that, that's a concept of helping you understand that how light and sound work and things of that nature. And when that something is dying and you have to go jump into another form so you can vibrate it in some way, shape, or form. And that's with words and feelings and shit like that. We could find a word that describe blah, blah, which was that. That's the flat line or something, right? So that is a lot of things that we could accomplish into that, as far as different words, different meanings that may sound the same or sound differently due to slight sigil changes in vowels and consonants, right? But it will all still be the offspring of something becoming flatline. So it'll be a way an animal can explain it. It'll be a way a human can explain it. It'll be a different way how we all explain it, right? And then since that's a thought form, a Metatron that like an idea, a masculine, a man that got many different perceptions that can be put in that one container and things of that nature. Since y'all worship man, because that's what man is, then one of those would be God to y'all. You know what I'm saying? The keyword God. Back in the Mishnah as another word. Now we use God as a representation of all other meanings and feelings and ideas can be thrown in one box. You know what I'm saying? That one little container. So when you say God, it can mean a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? But you got to think about who own that intellectual property of God, though. You know what I'm saying? Even though it's back to supported by the same frequency, who's ever teaching you their concept and feelings and emotions about God is a fucking demon. You know what I'm saying? Because we know it's an overall parameter, an overall spirit. And when we talk about overall spirit, it don't desire to even be in this dimension. So when you think it's space within space, this shit could go on for eons. And y'all be thinking, ain't no telling how lost y'all are to find real spirits out here, real spaces. that don't desire to be in one position under one light in some way, shape, or form. But that's a whole nother video. But like I said, consciousness. This consciousness is all things that can become materialized, either in light and frequency all the way down to heavy in frequency. Light and frequency, if you are a spirit utilizing third dimensional organs right now, so that means you're perceiving things and you concentrated more in the third dimension, so you came here and followed another spirit here, then that means that fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional aspects of light can only be received down here as forms of influence. You know what I'm saying? Things you can react and respond to. So when you receive ideas, feelings, and emotions, or things that may not necessarily make sense down here, you utilize your energy down here to make it make sense. Things from the periodic table, the way things are structured in the third dimension, the way your brain analyzes, filtering third dimensional energies when you receive things through your eyeballs, aka your eardrums, heart, stomach. All of those are eyeballs, you know what I'm saying? And when you receive that, right, you start to modify higher information through a third dimensional spectrum, and now you have the ability to make something make sense down here, aka based upon reality, the reality that you're in right now as far as a realm. But yeah, just pay attention to what you're saying, pay attention to what's actually going on, and pay attention to who's teaching what and what kind of mind state that they're in when they're teaching it, and therefore you'll be able to decipher the 3, 6, 9 behind everything before you get lost into the 1 and 2, the 4 and 5, and the 7 and 8. And therefore, once you get into the shadow, you'll be able to know what is this 1 or 2, 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 and 8 is being utilized for, and whoever the intellectual property of whoever trying to create this shit back here in the shadow government, is they a fool or not? You know what I'm saying? And I love y'all. Let me go get these motherfucking cars though. Flight boss, bitch.